Hi everyone, my name is Asher Rowan Doherty. I am a biological experiment and human trafficking survivor, and this is Created for War, Part 3. My first video in this mini-series explained the origins of the cult attached to my lineage, and the second talked about how cults maintain control over victims once they've established it, and today I'm going to talk about cult collapse. And what cult collapse means, historically, is mass murder, mass suicide, poisoning, or, in this case, doxing. So, let's just get into it. For those of you who aren't aware of some historically famous cults, I'm going to bring up the Jonestown Massacre as an example, and the Oregon community of the Rajneeshpuram. Feel free to Google those. There's also there's a culture of disbelief surrounding cult politics, cult psychology, cult abuse in the United States. And the people who torture cult victims, the people who run cults, know that. They will typically abuse and torture somebody so to such an extreme extent that their stories are unbelievable. And that is also part of the stigma of being in a cult. Like, for example, in the Jonestown Massacre, I'm sure that when the news broke, there were plenty of people that were, in denial that something like that could possibly happen, but there the bodies were anyway. So, I've already touched on the cult that has been started by my family. So that's Mary Donnelly, Brian Emerson, Kelly Doherty, just to name a couple of the old heads in this cluster of insanity. And then within that cult there is My Chemical Romance. So the question that I left off in my part 2 of this video, which you can find on what used to be my main channel, is why do so many cults end in tragedy? Well, it's because they are typically run by exploitative, abusive, insecure, and entitled people who are motivated only by the suffering of others and motivated only by exploiting others. And cult leaders, I believe, make the same mistake every single time in cults by underestimating the power of the human spirit. They believe that they have unlimited, untouchable power in the world, and anybody that questions, denies, or criticizes their power should be, doxxed, defamed, exploited, injured, murdered. It could be any number of unpleasant things. So within my family, I've been propagandized, I've been isolated, I have been, sex trafficked and abused, drugged, imprisoned, and related to My Chemical Romance, which, for those of you who don't know, is technically a music group. I was trafficked and doxxed by the band as a group starting in 2004. However, Gerard Way in particular was somebody who sexually abused me for, I don't know, maybe up to a year when I was a baby, starting after I was born, and I distinctly remember being, like him choking me almost to the point of death. He shook me, he poisoned me with cigarettes, just give the baby a cigarette, and I think the reason that there was a lull in the abuse between when I was born and 2004 was because I was too old for his tastes, as an infant. So I guess he probably doesn't like any wine that's aged more than a few months either. And then the summer of 2004 rolled around, and I was trafficked to tons of artists at Warped Tour, not all of whom hurt me, not all of whom, traumatized me. A lot of them tried to help me. But, I was a child. All I had known was sex slavery and, and abuse and trauma, and I've been drugged with various substances by the time 2004 rolled around, including GHB, morphine, alcohol, cigarettes, and thanks to MCR, cocaine. So I was held in my then parents' bedroom in Redding, California for an entire weekend. And I think maybe because Gerard, Mikey, and Frank are technically my brothers, we are at least half related. I don't particularly care how much. I was like not as afraid of them as I might have been of, some other people. And I was so used to, sexual abuse and familial abuse that I was like, all right, well, let's see if these guys can entertain me, which, sounds jaded, but I was a child and, I just, I didn't trust anybody. I didn't expect anything out of anybody. And what ended up happening was, they went back to Warped Tour after, filming and drugging and beating and raping and torturing and so on and so forth. And absolutely doxed me to everybody that would listen. And that was in 2004. And then next year in 2005, I remember my, then main handler, who is now deceased, who was my adoptive father. He actually asked me if I wanted to do, if I wanted to be a part of Warped Tour again. And I said no. Because I resigned myself to, having to deal with things like rape and trafficking. But I was 5, and I was like, that, once was enough. Once was enough. I didn't really like the attention. It was, I like working on a schedule, even as an adult, and having to entertain people that just show up on your doorstep. It's a pain. It's annoying. Especially when you're a kid and you only, the thing that you're hoping for most, like I was that, I just wanted the torture and the misery and the pain to end. So anyways, 2005 rolls around, and of course, in all of their dignity and courage, the members of MCR doxed me again. They talked about me on stage. They talked about me, I don't know. Who knows how many people they tried to sell me to. And it was all in service of stealing my fame, especially within, or any potential for fame, especially within the music world. And, I had Stockholm Syndrome from them. I had Stockholm Syndrome from my family. And, I am genuinely very sorry. I'm very sorry, and I feel guilt and remorse for a lot of the bands that were sent my way, because it was overwhelming and it was terrifying for me, and I reacted in ways that were really upsetting for some people, and I don't blame myself for not knowing what to do or not knowing who to trust, but I am grateful for everything that those bands tried to do for me. And, after 2005, my memory was wiped thoroughly for the first time. It wasn't the first time in my childhood, but I just lost my entire childhood. And then I started kindergarten. And, life just went on. And I had no idea. I had no idea about any of this because I was focused on public school. I was focused on, just surviving in a household like that. And then as I grew a little older, became a teenager, and I kind of started to rediscover this music, I was constantly, like, shamed and, like, judged for liking some of the songs that, maybe I had helped write as a child, or I had otherwise inspired people to write, and I didn't know. And so I became even more distrustful of just everybody in the world. And that is kind of how MCR has always... sun's back out. Hey there, baby. Missed you. We can move over. All right. You're gonna go on a little trip with me, y'all. A trip all the way to the stairs. I love my silly little awkward video diary. It's great. Love having y'all here. Thanks for subscribing. So that's basically their tactic against me. So it's doxing, it's labor theft, it's wage theft, it's intellectual property theft. And that's what they do to a lot of people in the scene. They threaten and coerce and intimidate anybody in the scene who, doesn't worship them. I believe one band in particular released an album. There's like this wisteria is just thriving. You gotta tuck it out of the way. Dang. There's a very it's a big album that came out in March of 2025 of this year, and I think it's beautiful. It helped me remember a lot of important things, and I already noticed that there was a particular song about extending oneself to somebody, and it's gone. Really interesting. So, yeah. To call them bullies is an understatement. But it's essentially what they do, and they used me as a 4 to 5 year old child to do that. And I recall... I recall being told some things by my handlers about what would happen on their next tour, which is the Long Live the Black Parade tour. Very interesting, considering my connections with that time period and with that idea. And I've seen the teaser trailers, I've seen some of the tour dates, and from what I understand, it's like, it's very fashy looking. It's, very World War II inspired. There's a lot of, just guys in suits, and, I think it looks really absurd. And, for example, Frank in particular loves to call me a dictator, and so I think what's going to happen is they're going to find some way to dox me publicly on tour and blame me for the racist, kind of fascist overtones that their art has taken. And, to that I say, it's your fault for signing to Warner Brothers. It's your fault for signing to Reprise Records, because, like, of course. And, they came to me, sort of through somebody else. Like, you can call it the grapevine, where they basically were like, well, we need your help. Otherwise, we're gonna do all this stuff to you. And, there's a good chance they might try to deepfake me saying, saying things about being like the leader of the moat, or like it's all about drag or whatever. I kind of read their captions. It was silly. Um, I take it seriously, but I was like, man, this looks like a middle schooler could have designed this. I mean, even somebody younger could have designed it. And yeah, there's like the guy looking out over this like white wasteland. And I mean, to the best of my knowledge, like Mary Donnelly is a proud white supremacist. So if she's got her hands in that, that's probably her touch. Could be Brian Emerson as well. Could be Mary's husband, John. Who knows? But it's not my fault, and it's not my problem. So it's going to be an interesting tour. And if anything, any harm comes to me because of what they do or what they say or what they try to make me say, it is their fault. They've been brainwashing and torturing me for, as long as I can remember. And, I'm not going to pretend as though they have anything to offer me, because they don't. So that's what I believe is going to happen. In addition to bands being intimidated and harassed, otherwise abused, by the members of MCR, like having certain songs taken down, especially for people that might be trying to talk to me or talk to other biological experiments, talk to other trafficking victims. And the reason why I brought them up as like this cult within a cult is because I need to talk about the bigger cult. So for example, there is a member of that family. Is it Mary? Is it John? Who knows? Who cares? I'm pretty sure it's John, who has this obsession with spreading and controlling people with HIV. Now, I believe his use of HIV kind of falls somewhere between the Jonestown Massacre and the Rajneeshpuram's use of salmonella. So, HIV is the type of disease where you can contract it, have no symptoms, and at worst, not know that you have it until you have AIDS. And, he might be somebody who has dealt with things like discrimination or conversion therapy, which I have as well. And his spread of HIV is his own particular bioweapon. He's used it against children, he's used it against other people who have then used it against children. Like, for example, one of my fellow experiments has essentially been turned into a living bioweapon. And I don't want to name him just to get him, just to keep him safe, but I don't know. I think he's a cool guy, so who can say? Other than that, this has been a little bit of a meandering conversation, but that's who I am. I'm a victim of a cult that exists within a cult, and the latest that I've heard is that I'm gonna be doxxed and painted as a fascist dictator. So, I don't know. I've done and said things that I am not proud of while I was held under duress, and it's easy for me to get confused about who I am because, at least until now, because I've never known anything else. I've never known anything except cult control and torture and abuse and, kind of existing in plain sight, yet being subjugated. So the next part of Created for War is going to be my confession. And I hope that y'all are enjoying my videos so far. I know it's a lot to take in, but it was a lot for me to take in too. Wink, I suppose. Shout out to everybody who has ever written a song to make people like me feel stronger. Shout out to anybody that did their best to advocate for me 20 years ago. I'm really grateful for everything that you've done for me now, and I look forward to enjoying that art from my current perspective, which is that I am no longer being kept in a state of constant terror and disbelief about my self-esteem and disbelief about my self-worth and disbelief about what some people have called fame. I don't know. I never got paid, so I guess I just call it notoriety and say thank you. Also, I'm a Satanist. I chose that when I was a little baby. I think I chose that before I was born. Shit. So that's the one thing I don't want MCR to get the credit for. Because, like, these fools don't believe in anything. So, hail Satan, everybody. And, oh, this is gonna be a little silly, but if you're watching, we should get Taco Bell. Okay. Bye, everybody.